Hello, good morning. First of all, thank you so much for watching this video and welcome back to the class. In the last class, we discussed some of the ideas and thoughts propounded by Gangadhar Tilak, his thoughts, his ideology, his view on Swaraj, and his view towards the British, his religious nationalism, economic independence. We discussed all that. In this class, we are looking towards the political technique. The political techniques he adopted. It is said that Gangadhar Tilak was generally acclaimed as the leader of the extremist group in the Indian National Congress. And his political techniques were based on emotionalism and realism, as I have explained earlier. Why this realism? Because he changes his political goals, political ideas, political techniques based on the situation. Although he joined the Indian National Congress in 1889 as a moderate, his stance changed later down the line. He has to adopt different stand. In 1897, he states that for the last 20 years, this country has been shouting to ourselves loudly, desiring that the government should hear us. But what actually happened was the shouts, the petitions, the propaganda that they present, the prayer that they present to the British government was no more affected. The government was no more than a sound of a gnat. It was no more than a sound of a flight. It was not effective at all. So he decided to change the political tactics. He said political rights is something that we have to vote for. We have to fight for. Something that individuals, our nation, state has to vote for. The moderates, he said, think that this can be won by persuasion, prayer, petition. But it wasn't so. It cannot be. If you want the right, you have to fight for it. You have to claim your right. He tried to connect with the emotions of the people. And how he does that? How he tried to connect with the emotions of the people? It is said based on emotionalism. I guess if you still remember the festival of Ganapati, Shivaji festival. He tried to connect with the people so that he tries to revoke the emotional sentiment of the people of the past. The people feel nostalgia of the past glory when they celebrate the Shivaji festival. Yes, there was someone who could stand up against the injustice and oppression of the mighty Mughals. That is Shivaji. So also he said, be it Hindu or Muslim, you can stand together to stand up against the injustice and oppression of the British Empire. Fine. With this, we continue. Yeah? So that was the political technique. Adopted emotions, which was based on emotions and realism. And during the partition of Bengal, when was the partition of Bengal? It was announced in 1903. I think it came into effect in 1905, revoked in 1911. If I'm not wrong. Yeah? So during the Bengal partition, he formulated 4-point program like Swadeshi, boycott, national education, and Swaraj. We shall discuss this one by one, and this we will start with Swadeshi. What is Swadeshi? What does Swadeshi mean? Swadeshi originally means use of indigenous commodity and to give up the use of foreign goods. It stands for economic freedom and aim at ending economic exploitation. It is generally believed that Gandhi was the first who talks of Swadeshi, but it wasn't so. A historical study reveals that long before Gandhi appeared in the scene in India in the 1904, Gandhi comes back to India only in 1915, and his political works begin only in the 1917, 18, and 1919, the non-cooperation movement. But long before Gandhi, Tilak has already adopted Swadeshi in the in their movement against the partition of Bengal in 1905, 1904, 1905. Tilak had given a call to start Swadeshi movement in India. And during that partition he said, "The love of nation is one's first duty. Next comes religion, and later comes government." Apart from that, he also said, "Swadeshi and Swadeshi alone be our battle cry forever, and by this we will grow in spite of the wishes of the rulers." Swadeshi and Swadeshi alone should be our battle cry, which means self-reliance. He knows clearly that Indians cannot fight against the Britishers by wars, by guns and bullets. But Indians can fight the Britishers with the help of the use of indigenous commodities, indigenous goods, and by boycotting British-made goods. When he talked of Swadeshi, when he said Swadeshi, he used Swadeshi in dual sense, in two sense, in economic sense as well as in political sense. Realizing, as I have stated, understanding that the Britishers had destroyed the trades, the industries, drained the resources of this country, he called the people of India to come forward and start Swadeshi movement. He appealed the people to prefer Indian goods and get ready to sacrifice. He also wanted to use Swadeshi as political weapons. How? By restoring faith in our own economic system, culture, and civilization. This could finally revoke us to control our political system. When you begin to control your economy, when you take care of your economy, as I have stated earlier, whosoever controls the purse, whosoever controls the money, controls the power also. This Tilak knows very well. So he said, it shouldn't be just economic, but also political. Not only in political and economic sense, but also in his personal life. He practices Swadeshi. He used only Swadeshi indigenous pepper or Swadeshi pepper for his journals. And when it wasn't available, when indigenously made peppers weren't available, what did he use? He used non-British peppers. Peppers which the Britishers doesn't produce. And moreover, he encourages the young man to start cottage industries, start up small industries, and gives full support. He encouraged the people to give full support to the Paisa Fund movement, which started in 1903 when the partition of Bengal was announced. With what purpose? With a purpose to encourage Indian industries. Paisa Fund movement, once again. Tilak also took initiative in establishing Bombay Swadeshi cooperative stores. He inaugurated Swadeshi exhibition in Calcutta during anti-partition agitation in Bengal. With all this, he was trying to encourage the locals. He was trying to encourage the Indians to use indigenous goods. He was trying to encourage the people of India to boycott British goods, to use homemade indigenous goods. This can help in self-reliance. This can help in restoring faith that the people of India has lost. This must be achieved. This can be achieved not only with Swadeshi, but Swadeshi along with boycott. So his next technique was boycott. Tilak advocated boycott of political techniques to carry out the mission of Swadeshi movement, which would not be successful without boycotting foreign goods, without boycotting British goods. So Swadeshi must be there, but along with Swadeshi, what must go hand in hand is the boycott of British goods, boycott of foreign goods and relying on indigenous Swadeshi goods. On top of this, apart from this, he also says it is to protect against the repressive, low and burdensome tax on the people, and to serve as substitute for war and violent method, which he thought it will be difficult, if not impossible, for the Indians to stand up successfully against the Britishers. He knows the military capability of British. British at that time was like the superpower. British colonies were everywhere. They were governing. Yeah? They were governing the world. They were the masters of the world at that time. And it was impossible. It was difficult, if not impossible, for the Indians to stand up violently by arms and bullets, by guns and bullets against the Britishers. He knows that very well. And so, this Swadeshi will act as substitute for war. It will act as substitute for violence, which he thought would not have been possible to apply successfully against the Britishers, as I have stated, because the Britishers were too powerful for Indians in terms of military. So he was trying to strike at the economic core, economic hub, with his method of Swadeshi and boycott. And by applying the technique of boycott, he wanted to create a mass movement. Boycott of British goods, and with this, create mass movement. He knows that one man cannot stand up against the Britishers, but masses, when they unite, miracles can happen. That's what he believed in. He believed in the extraordinary abilities of the ordinary common people. Ordinary common people can do extraordinary things when they come together, work together unitedly. That is why he called for mass movement. Tilak's technique of boycott, having economic, political, nationalistic and democratic dimension, was applied by Gandhi later in the 1920s in non-cooperation movement. And in post-independence, it was Jayaprakash Narayan. Yeah, it was in post-independence who applied to fight corruption and injustice in post-independent India. With this, we move on to the next point, that is national education. Another important technique adopted by Gangadhar Tilak. He knows that education plays an important role in the liberation of the country. Education will make the people aware and make them understand the message of his public life in spreading English education. He agreed that although it is a national education, he emphasized the importance of English language. He said English language was like the milk of the tigress, which is a strong diet. And if the youth of the country was brought upon it, they would bring India's independence immediately. Why English education was important? Because English education, through its literature on freedom, democracy, which we learn even in Western political thinkers, Western political thoughts. I told you about John Locke, father of liberalism, J.S. Mill, another liberal. Their belief in their doctrine of consent, their belief in individual liberty. If the Indians, the youth of this country, comes to know about the freedom, the liberty, the democratic principles, the liberal principles, then they will realize their own value. And by realizing the value of individuals, they will stand up against the Britishers. Which is why English education, English language is also important. Alright. English education, through its literature on freedom and on democracy, would make Indians conscious of their rights. He envisaged a system of education which should develop the nationalistic character within the students. Having discussed all these techniques, we can conclude that Tilak was the first mass leader in modern India. His fight for Swaraj, crusade against injustice, oppression, and tyranny, his endeavor to create effective public opinion through newspapers like Kisari. He published two newspapers, alright? Gesari, Kisari, and Maratha. Ratta. Kisari and Maratha. Through his newspapers, he emphasized on mass education. His concern for the peasants, workers, dealers, downtrodden, weaker section of the society, his identification with the masses, with the common people, and his call for national awakening in India made him a symbol of nationalism and liberation in India. He was the first mass leader. He identified himself with the people, which is why he was called as Lokmanya, darling, dearest of the Indian people. Unfortunately, he died on the 1st of August 1920. His fight for self-governing rights of the Indian people was carried on under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, who later was called the father of the nation. And we can say Gandhi was truly a successor of Tilak in Indian political history, be it the tactics he adopts by associating himself with the masses, or his technique of Swadeshi, Swaraj, non-violent means. Yeah? Gandhi, in fact, was truly a successor of Tilak in Indian political history, and not that of Gandhi, which Gandhi regarded as his political master. But most of Gandhi's tactics are adopted from Tilak. Gandhi also lost faith in British government, and this differed from Gandhi's moderate approach. He towed the line of Tilak's thinking, and completely in a non-violent way. Tilak was for Swadeshi. Tilak was for Swaraj. Tilak was for mass education. Tilak was for national education. And he identified himself with the masses. Gandhi also later tried to identify himself with the masses, and in the process gained him the father of the nation. This is all for today. This is all for Tilak's political thoughts. Thank you so much for your kind, patient listening. And if you have any doubt, any problem, feel free to contact me. All right. I wish you all the best.